I don't know. Good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate you all coming and hope you had a good holiday, especially your fathers and the mothers. And I asked you just before to take a look at the minutes, which are very brief, but to the point. As having said that, I would like Joanne to read the minutes. Because, for instance, the people who are not here, including Paulette, does not have a copy.
Okay, Paula, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Thank you. The meeting was called to order at 1 p.m. This is the minutes for the UCO Finance Committee for the meeting of May 24th, 2023. Meeting called to order at 1 p.m. Attendance was taken. Minutes of the last meeting were not included. Ed Grossman, UCO treasurer, called for a review of the duties of the treasurer and what the finance committee is supposed to do according to the UCO bylaws. Extensive discussion took place regarding the procedures to purchase CDs, as well as the legal opinion of Rod Tennyson stated at the May Delegate Assembly. A motion was made by America Maneguzzi, seconded by John Malloy, to make a motion at the Delegate Assembly to invest $5 million in CDs. The vote was 6 yes, 2 no, and no abstain. Ed Grossman requested that Richard Handelsman review the bilateral agreement. He requested that David Singer review the UCO bylaws, and the meeting was adjourned at 1:57 p.m. Submitted by Joanne Robinson, UCO Reporting Center.
Does anybody have any questions on the minutes? If you take a look at the agenda, would you read it because Paulette's not here?
Paulette, the agenda is that we're called to order. The next item is to read the minutes. The next item is old business. Under that, detailed examination of the purchase of bank FDI insured CDs. The next item is to open a discussion regarding CD problem. And under new business, there are no additional items for good of the order, and then the adjournment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, if you look at this agenda, I think it's not only important, but super important. And why? Unfortunately, Richard is not attending. I don't know if anybody else reviewed the bylaws. I did. And here's a summation. The summation is that since April, when it was recommended by me to buy treasuries, which was opposed, although we had very, very good reason, we had a representative from a bank and how it was secured, whatever. However, going forward, I have not been able to print it to bring it to this table, only because for the last couple of weeks I have no printer, I'm not home. However, looking at the June meeting, it became evident that there were 3 opinions on the table. The first was mine, which was upheld not by me alone, but by Richard Handelsman, who's the head of the advisory committee, where he supported my position that the treasurer, according to the bylaws, has the ability to put money in FDIC bank approved CDs. The second opinion was voiced several times, which is documented, unfortunately I couldn't bring it, that the officers committee was in disagreement because their position was that the treasurer had to bring it to the officers committee And the officers committee had to vote on it. And then it would go to the executive board. And then it would go to the assembly. Well, sometimes you get what you wish for and you really don't want to get it. We had a vote of the officers committee, which is documented and videotaped. And the vote was 3-4 buying the CDs, 4 against. Now that turned down the motion. However, according to our bylaws, which are very clear, that no matter if the officers committee turns it down, it then goes to the executive board. Well, the meeting following that officers meeting was supposed to be the executive board. However, that month, there was no executive board. So it wasn't presented to the executive board. Subsequent to that, when it wasn't approved, there was an attempt to bring it to the floor of the delegate assembly at the proper time, which was new business. At that moment that it was brought, both Donald Foster and Fausto jumped to their feet and said, we were prepared for this. And we have an opinion from Rod Tennyson, which partly says that the only time you could present to purchase CDs is in October for the budget. Now, he's a very bright lawyer. No one's always right. But how could you possibly do that? Because you don't know what the market is. Now, doing a little further, so that became the position of Rod Tennyson and the other, I stress the other officers. Okay. In support of the position that the officers really took, except me, was an email directly from Rod Tennyson, which addressed that it was perfectly okay to purchase CDs, not treasuries. Now that's an interesting reversal of something that was done 4 weeks earlier, which we do have a copy of. So where are we? And that's why I call this meeting a little bit of a bank trust. You now have 3 different opinions, and almost physically, we were precluded, at the right time, which was new business, to present the motion to buy CDs. That's in our bylaws, that's guaranteed from a bank and is guaranteed by the FDIC.
Right.
Now, what's happened at that point? Well, who suffers? The village. I projected that at a low number, 250 to 300,000 of pre-tax dollars, which could have been in our reserve account, which would reduce the premium of putting into the reserves in the following year, which has to rise because of what's built in the fixed cost. The largest fixed cost individually is the cable, which I wrote an opinion, you don't have to believe it, it's overdone, probably 3 times the amount it should be. However, we know for a fact that everybody is due for a substantial increase in insurance, where the insurance increase for 2023 ran anywhere from 30% to 100%. We know that the utility bills are.
Ed, excuse me, point of personal privilege. I think we understand all this. I think what we need to do is what are our next steps after what happened at the meeting?
Good. I think-
We, does anybody disagree with that? If we go back, the history of what you're saying today is making some very valid points. But if we can go back to the agenda and move forward on what the committee wants, what course of action the committee wants to take at this point.
I think you preempted me. This is supposed to be a brain trusting session. I'm open to any discussion. I have my opinion, which I will leave for last.
All right,
I recognize it.
okay, I saw the
Thank you,
memo,
Paulette.
Yep. I read the memo from Rod Tennyson, and it did say in the bylaws that we could buy CDs. And there was no time frame or type of year to buy the CDs, it was definitely in the bylaws, and I got with his name on there, so it was definitely there.
John,
And now that the rates are over 5%, we are talking over 250,000, 300,000 interest. And we're only paying $300 for interest for.
in all due respect,
Yeah.
in regard to what Paul had suggested, we're regurgitating the same information. And I'm looking for some suggestions.
All right, the suggestion I have is can we bring another motion again to the assembly and bring it up for another vote? I don't know what else to do.
That's on the floor. Can anybody else from the committee go first? Nothing from the committee?
I'll weigh in on that.
Michael?
So if we're talking letters from legal opinions and we're citing the bylaws, if an argument's gonna be made on that, do we have that material here? To be able to cite, to review that letter from the attorney? Do we have any materials to go over to support the point?
Good point. I requested twice to get a hard copy of Rod Tennyson's opinion. His last opinion, and never got it. Okay, so it's a good suggestion. Anybody else?
And do you have the Rod Tennyson email that we had talked about?
Yes, I have it, but that's why. We have a copy of Tennyson's. Everything I said is being documented. Unfortunately, I couldn't print it, but we will print it. Olga, you're not on the committee, but what do you have?
This is all absolutely unnecessary. The UCO bylaws says that you have the right, the treasurer has the right to buy CDs. Just do it. We don't need the approval of the officers. We don't need Rod Tennyson. We don't need anything. The bylaws says it all and it's very clear. So all this other stuff is just nonsense. It's just put there to stop you from buying the CDs, which will benefit the community as a whole, period.
Does anybody on the screen? David Singer, do you have anything to say?
I know that whatever you suggest is the right thing. I mean, I learned a lot from you and I respect you and I'm with you all the way.
How about Americo?
Mr. Chairman, I think what you have to do is this, you have to get somebody, you've got to, from this committee or somebody from the floor who is a delegate to make the motion at the next board of, the next General Assembly to move the motion that you have the right to invest in CDs and let the General Assembly decide whether or not you approve or disapprove. And if they should approve, you've got the right to proceed regardless of any of the other directors suggesting this, that, or the other.
Does anybody else have anything to say?
If you're going to, Mr. Chair, if you're going to do that, then I believe that you have to provide within the a copy of the language in the bylaws so that the General Assembly can read it and not hear it from you and not hear it from anybody else, but see it in writing so that they have a moment to review it.
Good
If
suggestion.
if you're going to take that action.
Anybody else? Is everybody
I
done?
have a question. Yeah, Chairman, I have a question. If the bylaws clearly state that you are allowed to buy, then why do you have to bring it to bring it forth to any meeting or any questions? I mean, if we are supposed to abide by the bylaws, and if it's that clear, sorry, I'm a little confused why you have to present it again.
Well, I think those suggestions are good, and if you take a look at the meeting, you'll see that we were unable to do it. I would suggest it'll take 2 minutes. It's a very small section. We could read it all here together.
Yeah.
It is clear as mud. And I am upset that this is affecting the community in a very adverse way. Everybody's so happy that we made $3,000 from the paper, which is good, but it isn't $300,000 pre-tax. And we were overruled on the floor, including our CAM, where I don't know where he gets that responsibility. Now, I think all those are good suggestions. However, here's my little suggestion, and it's up to you guys. I'm the treasurer. I have much to say as any officer, and it's clear what my duty is. What's unclear is being brought to the table that Mr. Tennyson has 2 opinions in a short period of time. So the officers of UCO, or at least 2 of them, contacted Mr. Tennyson, got an opinion which we haven't seen. So I like to balance the court. I'm an officer. I would like to retain an outside attorney who specializes in condominium law and let that attorney bring it to the table. And I think the cost of that should be borne by UCO, because it is unfair to bring Mr. Tennyson, who has been with the UCO for many years and being a very astute attorney, he still makes mistakes, because going back to when the advisory committee was headed up by Anita Buchanan, she clearly read one of Mr. Tennyson's edicts at a meeting. I asked to get a copy. I was told I would get it. Then I got an email saying it's privileged communication. I have several emails, and I had to hire a lawyer at my own expense, which I did, which said exactly what 92% of the people know, that once the party who has the privilege opens it up and tells you there is no longer privilege. That took like 2 months and cost me several $100s to bring that to the fore, and I did get it. I won't do that again. I think my position has changed. And therefore, I started to shop for what I consider some of the top-notch attorneys. Could be Mr. Becker, could be 2 or 3 other attorneys that are well-known in this, and resolve it, because every day we don't do it is costing the village money. I'm also a bit surprised that one of the people, other officers who voted for it, changed his opinion, but anybody can. However, not belaboring the point, I think it's time to resolve the issue. I see your hand, Paulette.
Um, slightly off topic here. We, at my building, engaged the conversation of purchasing CDs with some of our reserve. I had some residents who were very hesitant. They were very concerned with the stability of the FDIC. In a compromise, instead of taking 30% of our reserves, we took a smaller amount and did a first step towards, this is going to work out well for 6 months. We'll look at it 6 months from now and maybe purchase some more. But perhaps it's the amount of money that we are asking to invest. Maybe if I know you went to Bank of America and they have this program that they will do these multiple amounts. Maybe we try with just 250,000 as a first attempt. And then in 6 months, we try to do more.
I appreciate your recommendation, but let me bring you a little bit up.
Let me just say something. I have, 3 of my associations I have, we're already investing in CDs for the last couple of years. We're just doing this recently. We have agreements between Stratford Association and Plymouth. Now combined, the 2 organizations that we've been starting to buy CDs. We have 3 out there right now. And the only problem now, we had to just share in the interest between everybody. So we've already been buying CDs for a couple of years.
Yeah. And you are very progressive, and that's wonderful. I wish we could be doing that in my building, but I have some very conservative people that
FDIC cover you for the full amount that you're investing.
yeah, I know.
They got billions of dollars and they get money from all the banks on a regular basis. So
Yeah.
their reserves don't go out. Their money.
I have some neighbors that like to listen to Fox and the doomsday. So we've got people that are really doomsdayers, and we have people that believe in government. I'm just throwing that out, that maybe the money,
The FDIC have never
too
gone,
high.
not paid anybody
I
in this
don't-
whole time.
Just to bring you up to date, Paulette, when I first got elected for the first time, it was also no funds interest on bank deposits.
I remember that.
And lo and behold, Citibank, right across the street, ran a promotion. And the promotion was for any new commercial account, they would pay the equivalent of 6%. And I said, gee, that's a fine. And we had a vote. I was very new. And actually, we had 2 officers who voted against it, and it was for 250,000. It did go through, but only 2 signatures were put on the account because that was the officer's method of protesting. Now, that was 250,000. You mentioned that number. I think I've been in practice long enough and had similar situations to be conservative. Right now, we're holding $11 million. My proposal was for 500,000, which is dipping in to the equivalent of $250,000. There is 2 things that are on the table here now. One is when an officer is elected and has a job which is included in the bylaws, that's a vote of confidence. Now, John was trying to bring up that never, ever, ever, you may say T-bills, one that FDIC did not pay. And just for general knowledge, The FDIC insurance is separate and apart from the United States actual government. It's an insurance plan which every time someone buys a CD, they pay a premium. So the money backing up the CDs is not just the treasury, and if the treasury ever went broke, you could sell all your jewelry and hope you had diamonds. And it is, to me, I'm not a kid off the street. I manage more money than we're talking about $5 billion where people got paid. And I also manage pension. My job is to maximize what we could earn and minimize what we spend when we're overspending. So I would say that's a good suggestion, but I feel if you're questioning my judgment, I am questioning the judgment of 116 people who voted without having any information. And I'm questioning the judgment of officers who changed their mind. And I'm questioning Rod Tennyson's adjustment. So I feel Mr. Tennyson is an astute attorney, but he's not perfect. He's made mistakes before. And there's an expression, an attorney that never lost the case never took a hard case. So I feel if we're permitted to bring it to the delegate assembly, and the delegate assembly doesn't get a speech that it's not guaranteed, I think that would be sufficient. But if we can't do it, which they physically stopped it, and I implore you to look at the meeting, then I think we should have a knowledgeable, independent attorney review the bylaws and the position that Mr. Tennyson and the other officers took. Other than that, I don't think I'm meeting my fiduciary responsibility, which is clearly in the bylaws that an officer is supposed to work for the benefit of the community. If not, why have the treasurer or have a treasurer who never handled money? That's my position. Excuse me?
If the bylaw gives you permission to buy CDs,
Yeah.
okay? What is stopping you from doing that?
I answered that question before, because the bylaws specifically say tax or the spending of any other type of money requires 2 officers' signatures.
Okay, let me.
Well, let me finish.
Go ahead, wait a minute, I just need to clarify that. Are you saying that there is not another officer that will put his signature on there to give you the right to buy the CDs? Is that where we're at?
Well, I can only say, look at the action of the officers. I will not do it because it says 2.
Okay,
Although I have numerous hundreds of checks that are not signed by 2 officers, some checks are not signed by anybody.
so
I don't want to diversify. My position is I'm supposed to get 2 signatures.
I'm just trying to.
Well,
clarify-
Have you tried to get some signatures?
Clarify this, so I understand that it is, the reason you're not doing it is because there is not another officer who will sign in order for you to purchase the CDs. That's what I need to know, thank you.
Well, what I think you should do is poll the other officers, but action speaks louder than words. If you notice, no other officer stood up for it. There were other people, but no other officer.
Can I assume that even if you went to the delegates and they approved it, the officers still, another officer still has to sign, and they may refuse to sign even though the delegates approved buying CDs? Is that where we're at?
I'm not an attorney, but according to the bylaws, since the delegates are really the directors, they would be in violation of their own fiduciary responsibility.
The officers would be,
Any signature authority,
okay,
you could only poll it. And we've tried to have this put on the agenda. And what I'm saying is there is a time to fish and cut bait. I like Paula's suggestion, but we've tried. Okay,
could somebody make a motion at the meeting to put it on the agenda, to vote on it?
well, you can make a motion to have it on the agenda before it's brought to the floor, but it's very clear that this comes under, when it's challenged, under new business.
Which I brought up previously, asked for a vote.
I was asked what I consider non-thinking questions. One of the questions was, why would Bank of America do all this work for $300?
No. Okay, I think I explained that, it's more than just the $300.
Right, that's what they charge you.
That's all they charge you. They actually have your $5 million in-house. They can use that money as collateral, it's called capital under management.
I have to disagree with you.
Okay, you can, that's fine. But I'm
When
not
the
wrong.
money is in a CD, it's in your name and.
No, it's in your name, but they got your money on the records as collateral.
But
You on your way?
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
I had my soup.
You did? Good for you. Good for you.
I know, that's
Good- Good for
thank
you.
you. Okay, see you.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
no,
See you
okay.
next week.
Okay,
Okay,
bye-bye now.
bye-bye.
do we get the ability to? set the- Well, we have several offices.
Yeah.
Members of the committee. I don't wanna say any more. If someone wants to make a recommendation,
Maybe the safest way is to get the attorney like Becker and get his opinion.
I agree with that. Well, are you making that motion?
I make a motion that we contact Becker and we get a motion, what our motion is to buying CDs by the treasurer.
I just mentioned Becker, it's.
Yeah, just as an attorney, correct.
No,
Just Becker,
any
fine
qualified
attorney.
Can I speak on that?
Excuse me,
Can I speak on that?
I'm sorry,
You
Can
want
I
to
speak,
speak
can
on
I
it?
speak on that recommendation?
Yes.
I'm having trouble.
Can I speak on that recommendation?
Why don't you talk?
Absolutely,
So even if we are going to consider getting an outside counsel to review the bylaws and the efficacy of the proposal. If we don't have the counter indication in front of us to be able to vote on it. How can we vote on something that we can't see in front of us?
if we don't have one,
If we don't have the opinion that was levied before in front of us, how can we vote to get another opinion on top of that?
We have one opinion from Ron Tennyson already, you can
no,
only have
it's
that
not in writing.
Right, but we don't
It's
have
just-
any to review.
email.
It's just as Mr. Israel would call it, dishes. Tupperware,
Yeah.
that's Tupperware.
I have it in email, that's all I have.
Well, it's very nice, and we spent all this time. We made recommendations as the finance committee and brought it to the officers. And they voted it down, but didn't bring it forward. I personally think that it's important that we have another qualified attorney
Fine.
to review the bylaws and get a signed copy from Mr. Tennyson. All we have is verbiage, which is on the screen,
All right, call him again.
so we could sit here and debate this all day long. I think we have to come to a conclusion. And it is only if I am right and the committee is right, to the detriment of the entire village. Mr. Americo,
Mr. Chairman, you I think the lady is sitting beside you, beside the table is Olga, and you did not answer her question, yes or no. You answered it in a backhanded fashion. Okay, so now that's one thing. Now, if you're going to make a motion to the floor has to understand, the General Assembly has to understand what they're voting on. So I'm suggesting as follows, that if you are going to recommend that the UCO invest in CDs, then you have to give them a definition of what is currently the use of their funds as compared to the suggested use of the funds, and what is the results of the difference. Now, is there any difference with the guarantees from the banks on what they are currently providing as compared to the CDs? If not, all you're doing is losing money.
Well, I could only, at this point, banks have gone bankrupt. Banks have gone bankrupt, and the depositors in banks that are insured up to $250,000 collect their money, maybe not tomorrow, but they get their money back. The CDs are specifically guaranteed by the FDIC. Now, John prepared and we distributed a plan in writing, and it was given to the officers. They didn't like the plan. We had an official from Merrill Lynch, which is owned by Bank of America, who gave a detailed presentation. All that was ignored. I was asked to bring in anybody that I recommend. My recommendation came on the basis of Don doing a lot of shopping, because if you, I, or anybody else wanted to invest in a FDIC CD, you and I would be limited to $250,000 coverage. For whatever reason, and John has it in writing from the Treasury, that there is a special agreement with Merrill Lynch / Bank of America that they will do up to $50 million.
Correct.
Now, the
Guaranteed.
bookkeeping expense is a waste of time. Look at the bank charges we're paying for some of the accounts we have, and look at the waste of good funds. So, and besides that, history will show that we've done this before without all this rigmarole. Also, I bring to your attention that one of my predecessors, took funds from our reserves, which were dedicated funds, not pooled funds, pulled it out of all the accounts and left Century Village with $35,000. No action was ever taken. It is a crime that you have unqualified people on committees doing things, and no one's brought to any particular level of reprehension. In fact, it comes to my attention that a very nice lady who was treasurer prior to us put money in non-guaranteed funds. I see a hand, although it got dark. Did you turn off the light there, Miss?
No, it's just a dark room that I'm sitting in. Why did the officers say no? Why did they turn it down?
The reason ultimately, which I mentioned, was, and that's documented, that their position was that I, as treasurer, any treasurer, had to bring it to their approval. I said, no, finally
Okay.
it went. It went, they voted on it, and then they didn't like the result. So it was supposed to the executive board and the delegate assembly.
So it went to the executive board and they said no?
No, it never got to the executive.
Okay, it went to the officers and the officers said no.
Right, absolutely. And
And why did they say no?
well, 3 officers voted yes, 4 officers voted no. I'm looking around the room. I only see, and I could be corrected, at that time, I could be wrong, I have to think back. I think there's only 1 officer in the room who voted no.
That's me.
That's right.
I'm an officer and I voted no because I've never seen anything of substance as far as a proposal. I've seen a marketing, a 1-page marketing sheet, and I'm seeing some copies from a Google search, but I haven't seen the actual proposal for what it is that is being proposed. I mean, I understand there are many things that can be done, but I don't see anything in the way of an actual, this is what I want to do proposal.
Okay, you've never seen anything from Merrill Lynch?
Well, it's a 1-page sort of marketing sheet that says
Okay.
this and this and this and this and this. Well,
Would you be more comfortable with a lesser amount?
No, it's got nothing to do with the amount. I'd like to see the specifics of where the money is today, where you wanna put it, how much do you wanna use? Do you wanna ladder it, or are you gonna, and how much risk is involved? Because there is a risk.
Well, the risk has been minimized because it's guaranteed.
I'm
by
not
the-
saying,
Okay,
I'm not saying it's a big risk or a little risk, I just would like a risk analysis. I'd like to know where the money is now, what is it earning, when do you want to take this action?
Okay,
Tell
Okay.
me the result
okay,
you anticipate.
that's fair, and we can write down, can we write down all those questions and specifically put it in paper and give them to her and all of the other officers? I think those are valid questions.
I think so
Thank you.
too. And I have a gentleman here who spent a lot of time and wrote up not 1 page, but wrote up several pages, presented it to all the officers, and I.
Can I see that?
oh, yes,
I don't have it.
we have it, it was on the table there.
Okay, all right, can we redistribute it to the officers again?
Is this what you're talking about?
Some of that. We
Alright,
also have the Merrill Lynch side and Bank of America side.
that's a marketing sheet,
Oh, yeah, not that, no.
okay, I don't have,
Mr. Chairman,
and this is it says the word proposal, but it's all that's on here are copies from Google searches.
Okay, all right. I think if we sat down, we spent 45 minutes. And this last couple of minutes, listening to what she says, if we give our officers what they need to make a decision, I'm gonna be back in town next week. Maybe 2 or 3 of us can sit down, because I've never seen the proposals, because I've been out of town, and write up something that would satisfy the officers.
Well, I believe we did it, it's 1 avenue, there's another question. However, we're saying we presented it, Joanne said we didn't. I think it's a simple thing.
Okay, I'd like to see what you gave everybody.
Well, you're entitled to it, we'll represent it, and in fact, what I would do is I would invite the gentleman from Merrill Lynch
Oh, David.
to come back and.
I don't need, I don't know if I need to
Oh.
listen to what he has to say.
Well,
I heard him before. And I agree, he's trying to sell something. But we have many members of the community have some very simple questions and put it down in writing. We hear words, give it to me, answer my questions. Listen to what I have to say, answer my questions. And that's what Joanne is saying, I think.
Yes, thank you, Paulette.
Okay, so. what
Next
I-
week.
I want to,
Next week
can I
will be,
say something? I see, Amerigo is trying to speak, he's too polite, he keeps raising his hand, he's a really nice fella, and everybody's ignoring him. I think we should give Amerigo a chance to speak.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Excuse me?
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, the last speaker has a good point, because my experience is this, that you write a report, and there's a member of the finance committee that's at the table who recommended that a report be written, and Paula was seconding it. If you intend to suggest a different type of investment, then for heaven's sakes, have it written, have it approved by the finance committee. This is the committee, and then it goes to the other committees. But if you propose a new method of financing on your own, you stand to either accept it or reject it, or have it accepted or rejected. But even your finance committee members are asking, please write a report so that we can read it, and then we can approve it or amend it.
I will be more than glad, but what I would like is just talk. How is it secured? Give me the question and we'll answer the questions to the best of our ability. And I think the senior question is how secure our money is by putting it into CDs guaranteed by the FDIC.
right, the FDIC and another system was called SARS. This is a separate system insurance company that backs up the FDIC, not just the 250,000, which is the max for normal people. But from what we're doing, they're gonna guarantee all our funds by writing and by signatures of the senior private banking managers, guaranteed up to whatever we're gonna invest in, and they can go up to $50 million.
Now, I have no problem with that. If you're talking about the amount, I do have a problem. I would like to see anybody who is objecting to my thought, not because who's ever managed anything near the amount of money we're talking about, and I could prove 5 to 6 times that amount, okay? And I got paid well for that. And I'm not getting a nickel, I'm not asking, I spent my own money. I think everything is to the detriment, because we'll do that, but that doesn't answer the other question as to what the treasurer is required to do. So these are all nice, and if the treasurer is required to do it, the bylaws should be amended. Okay, because that's a job description. And I feel I'm doing my job. And so I'd like to move this along. And very nice, I'm glad you're here, Paulette. It's a new voice. And I'm never, ever against suggestions, because my career and where it was basis of listening to people who reported to me. And it made me move ahead. So we have some very astute people here. And I think I didn't hear from one of our listeners. Is that, Richard,
Yeah, Richard. Wake him up.
Can't hear you, Richard.
can you hear us?
You're muted.
Can you?
He's muted.
You're muted. That's very unusual for Richard to be muted.
Right with him or then?
Let me call him. Let me call it. Call Richard Handelsman.
In the meantime, Mr. Chairman, Paula Burdick was trying to get your attention a minute ago.
Just 1 second, let's do one thing at a time. Richard,
I can't hear you.
we can't hear you. Pay the bill. Well, hold on, can everybody hear Richard now?
Negative, is it on speaker?
No,
Your phone's not on speaker, Ed.
It's not on speaker? It's-
Yes.
Try that one.
Richard, talk.
Can you hear me?
There you
Yeah,
go.
pay your bill.
Yes, yes.
Well. In my opinion, as I've already said, the historic.
Hold it. Hold it. This phone jumps around. Someone else. It's because of these things, and I gotta take them off. I don't know. The mechanics sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Let's see. Can you hear him now?
Yeah.
All right, the bylaws specify that the treasurer shall.
Talk. For some, hold it, Richard. I'm trying to make this thing louder. Did everybody hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Try that again, Richard. Someone else has a phone. How about that?
Mr. Chair, we've got 5 minutes left in this meeting. May I make, I understand the issue with the officers and getting 2 officers to sign off. In the meantime, to satisfy perhaps many people on the officers that are there, would you redistribute the information that you gave to the officers and highlight the answers to Joanne's questions in that document and resend it to everybody?
Well, no problem with that, but it doesn't seem to have satisfied him. So I think it's simple enough, especially Joanne, put your questions in writing and we'll reply to those questions.
I am making a motion. Would somebody second this request? And I'll clarify it.
I second your motion.
Thank you. The request is to resend the information that you gave to the officers. Joanne asked some specific questions today. Please highlight those questions and answers that are in that document and just email it to us.
If the motion is on the table, I'll vote for it.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, Richard has something to say and I think we should hear him.
Okay, we've had a motion in a second. Now Richard, you have discussion.
Does someone else have a phone?
Yeah, you want me to try phone?
You want me to give you Richard's number?
You put it in so you don't say it on the,
I have to go there.
Mr. Chairman, count the votes. Let's get on with this meeting.
Sorry there, we spent the time. Now let's get to a conclusion, and I think Richard, as chair of the advisory committee, is entitled to
I agree, Mr. Chairman, but we have 3 minutes left on this Zoom.
Why is it 3 minutes left?
I thought it was an hour long.
Well, I appreciate that, but our meetings sometimes run beyond 3 minutes.
All right. I mean,
I hear your motion, but I think, let me try this one more time. Call Richard Hamilton.
I haven't.
We're here.
Richard. Speak up.
Bylaws specify that invest in CDs or other government insured bonds. The money right now is at more risk than if you put it into CDs. Because it's junk.
Why don't someone give Richard, what is it? Hold on. This is really annoying.
You got a phone at the Dollar Tree.
If it picks up, no, that's terrific. Richard,
Put your speaker on.
We get full confidence in delegate assembly and have our arguments there.
Richard, we didn't hear you. We can hear you now. Go back.
It got turned off speaker.
Yeah,
It's not, it's sounding, I don't know.
We got it, it's okay.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, but you can't hear me.
Now we can, yes, we can.
talk loud.
Man, talking loud, I'm practically yelling. Just bring it up, bring the motion up at the delegate assembly and have our arguments there.
What motion are you talking
To
about?
buy 5 million
To
CDs.
have, to allow you to
We've done
invest
this
in
twice.
CDs.
I think we're going around in a circle. I'd like to make some progress. Your opinion was read at the delegate assembly. It was brought up at the last delegate assembly that it wasn't in the minutes. And I asked it to be in the minutes, and if you look at the newspaper, that wasn't in this month's delegate minutes. So I think let's put this to bed. I like the idea of settling it, but I'd like to make one amendment. I don't want to go around in 100 circles. Joanne is here. I'd like to get Joanne's questions and we'll address those questions. If I'm not mistaken, Mr. Boaz originally voted to buy CDs. If he has any questions, because he changed his vote, I'd like to get his questions so we could put this to bed.
We don't represent all of the officers. We're just
They-
2 of 8 officers.
He's an officer,
We're just 2 of us.
so.
There's under.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, you have a motion, you have a seconder?
I've got all the questions.
Jesus, Murphy. Mr. Chairman, you have a motion, you have it seconded, call the question.
Who?
You have a motion that was made, I seconded it, and called the question. Get on with this meeting.
Well,
when the motion has been called, there's no additional discussion. You vote right now and that's,
we had discussion. Let's have a vote. Didn't we just lose a member?
Yeah, John just.
I think it's
Yeah.
temporary, I don't.
Mike just walked out.
Yeah,
I'm right here. I don't know, you have
He's back.
David Singer, who's,
Yes,
you have,
raise your hand for, all in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
You gotta get a recall.
wait, hold it. Excuse me, who asked that question? You
It
should,
was,
you're the
it
secretary.
was Paulette. Paulette's motion is to resend the information to the committee with the questions that I had asked highlighted,
Correct.
Oh, the questions.
and
The questions that she asked and the answers within that document, just highlight it.
right? So that's the motion. It
Fine.
was seconded by John. Would all the committee members who agree, please raise their hands.
Can't do that. Got a call.
Got a
Gotta
call.
make a roll call.
Okay, we'll do a roll call.
Michael,
Michael,
In regard to getting.
I can't hear you.
In regard to getting that information out to everyone, so we can have it in front of us, I vote yes.
okay, John,
Yes,
Paulette,
Yes.
and America,
Yes,
and Richard.
He's,
victory, yes.
And David Singer,
Yes,
thank you.
yes,
Okay, so that is the committee, and so it's unanimous that will be.
Did I vote? You gave him
I'm sorry.
I can't vote.
You're
I've
about,
been
you're about to
curtailed.
vote, so great.
Did David Bowers vote?
David,
David votes no because it's an unnecessary motion.
What was that?
I vote no because it's an unnecessary motion.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
I'm,
My opinion.
It would be necessary.
it's
guaranteed.
Ed, are you voting yes?
I am thinking because I am going to go with David Bowers because I think it's not necessary.
Okay, and I,
It's very good.
Then let's make a motion, we bring it to the assembly again, and vote on it.
okay, I'm gonna abstain from this vote because
That's
it's
a no.
mentioned in it. It's an abstention. So the votes are 1, 2. There were 6 yes votes. 2 no and 1 abstention. So
The
the
motion,
motion does carry.
the motion carried. Thank you all. I didn't plan on any longer discussion and Paula said she has to leave. Because the only question I had is when do we reconvene? And I'm making the suggestion that we don't wait a month to reconvene. So as chairman, I think I have the right to call a special meeting.
Yes, you do.
And once the writing, I get a copy exactly of what Joanne wants, what was done before, I will distribute it via email and then call a special meeting to bring this forward. And I would hope, and David just came back, that this all gets done before Tisha B'Av. So
Whatever that is.
it's August.
Yeah, that's the commemoration of the down.
Am I right, David?
Temple 1 and Temple 2.
Tisha B'Av is in August.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody? have
I'm
else they'd
I'm
like-
checking my calendar.
The downing of the 2 temples, 1
I
and
make
2.
a suggestion that Richard finally figures out a unmuting spell.
What's more important is we.
Sorry, Chairman, I'm sorry, you have your calendar wrong. I think you need a new calendar because Tisha B'Av is July 27th.
Oh, because the Jewish calendar and the American calendar
Yeah.
doesn't agree.
It's not a good holiday.
But that's okay. I'd rather have Tisha B'Av earlier.
When are we calling that special meeting?
Excuse me?
When are we calling the special meeting?
after we get everybody's put together the answer
Right,
that we asked and get a copy of what Joanne is
I'll
asking.
try and get you things, but my camera, my computer is being fixed. I won't get it, something all over it. I'll get back.
You can, at that meeting, if we can get everything together,
Yes,
all the references for documents that people, various documents that people have asked for,
And
then
thank you all,
you got all the
we
documents.
can review it all in one
You got
shot.
all the documents.
not with me,
No, I didn't say with you.
but I wanna thank Paulette, who's a new member, bringing her political experience to the table there.
You all have a nice weekend. I look forward to reading the information. And maybe then Joanne and I can sit down and go over it over a cup of coffee.
Sure, that'd be great.
All right, thank you all.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
On behalf
Bye-bye.
of on behalf of all the residents, thank you for serving. This is
We'll make a
important.
motion that we adjourn.
I'm excusing myself because I'm looking for money.
Looking for money.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you for doing this. Give you a lift home?
Was there?
I'll give you a lift home.